This episode of the Doing All Right podcast is presented by our friends at Prize Picks. I'll get that out eventually. Super happy to be joined today by a good buddy of mine. No Voch Lombardi, as you see, so I had to bring in the heavy hitters today, and I brought in an old friend of mine, an old scouting buddy, a guy who I really enjoyed working with, not only on a professional level but on a human level. This man is one of the nicest human beings you'll ever be around. He was a great teammate of mine at DallasCowboys.com. When I felt like I was going to jump off the ledge a couple of times, I would walk into this man's office and he would sit me down and he would say, "Hey, think about it this way." And so with that, I bring on Tom Ciskowski, one of my buddies, like I say, from my days with the Dallas Cowboys. Tom, a longtime player personnel guy with the Cowboys, in the league for over 25 years. In scouting service. If you really love Larry Allen, this guy to my left is the reason why that Larry Allen's here. We all seem to miss Larry Allen, but this guy right here had the vision for that. Tom, again, a longtime personnel guy, longtime scout, and then an executive with the Cowboys, and a big part of 3 Super Bowl teams as well for the Dallas Cowboys. Thomas, welcome to the Doing All Right.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
Well, good. Did all those things make you nervous when I was talking about you? Did you kind of go, "Oh, wait a minute, where's he about to go with this stuff like that?" No, Thomas. Like I said, all those things about you were absolutely true, and there were a lot of times where I wouldn't listen. I thought I had all the answers in a lot of ways, and when coming from Green Bay and, Philadelphia, those places, Jacksonville, I really appreciate, and this is going to be a love fest for a couple minutes. I kind of love fest you already, but I do appreciate you accepting me in all my travels that I've been and all my different views and stuff like that. But I can say you meant a lot to me doing and helping me be a better evaluator. And so I want to thank you for that as well. When you first started with the Cowboys, you were at University of Miami, Arizona State were the 2 places. So you were like a college coach. So how did we get involved in personal? Usually guys will go the route of like recruiting coordinator, things like that, and then maybe get in. But you went a little bit different path with Jimmy Johnson down there in Miami and stuff like that. Kind of talk to us about how your relationship with Coach Johnson got you to maybe where you're at.
Well, initially, I was a graduate assistant at Arizona State, and Darryl Rogers, I was at the National Coaches Convention. He waved me over and he said, "Hey, there's a guy, I don't know him, his name's Jimmy Johnson. He just got the Oklahoma State job." And I told him that you were from Oklahoma, and he wanted a few Oklahoma ties, and so I interviewed and got the job.
Okay, so Oklahoma State, I forgot that the Oklahoma State tie. Yeah, okay.
Yes. And then through the Miami deal, as Wichita State in between.
Yeah.
But Jimmy contacted me and said, "You always enjoyed recruiting and evaluating players, and we have a scouting position." And I said, I really want to coach, and he kind of convinced me that you put your heart and soul into it for a couple of years, and if you miss coaching, I'll help you get back into coaching. Well, I started out as a Blesto scout, and that is, you can cut your teeth real quick with that.
Sure.
There's a lot of information, evaluation that goes on there. And I missed coaching initially the first year, but then I was moved the second year. Jeff Smith took a personnel position, director of college scouting with the Denver Broncos.
Broncos, yeah.
So I took over for Jeff on the West Coast, and it was a great experience. A lot of good scouts out there. A gentleman named Milt Davis with the Detroit Lions mentored me, as well as Don Dice with the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
They really helped me, and I said, I really love this, and I love evaluating, and I think today's a lot different. There wasn't the exposure to the players as there is today.
Right.
And you could dig and find a guy, former basketball player, he's only played football for a year, but you see great length, great ability, and you could present that type of player to the group and maybe convince them to draft him, and that you might have a have something in a couple years down the road.
So really, the part with the coaching, you really wanted to do that, but then you kind of fell in love. What did you fall in love with the grind of it, or what did you fall in love with about that made you initially want to just give up? Because a lot of guys don't want to give up coaching. Right. They kind of look at it like, well, no, I this is a path for me to maybe get in, and then I could coach. But what made you flip the switch early to get you involved in wanting to be a scout?
I just think that the challenge of finding a guy that can help your team, and at the same time, well, I wasn't married at the time, so I was out and about. A lot of times I'd stay out 4 weeks at a time.
Right.
Why go home?
Why go home? Yeah.
Yeah. Let the club kind of enjoy.
Yeah.
Pay the weekend when you're out, but. It was just the challenge of finding guys, and I always used Chris Hall and I would talk about this a lot. Trust your eyes.
Right.
Too many times you go to Alabama or these big institutions, and they're great programs, but that guy is being hyped as an All-American. I like the guy at Colorado School of Mines better than this guy.
Sure.
So you have to build up. You have to have enough confidence in yourself that what you see is legitimate, and don't get tied up in a conference or a team.
Yeah. When you talk about the early days with the Cowboys, though, and I mentioned Larry Allen, Sonoma State, when we were all, and I was at Green Bay when that was going on, but talk about you meant, like I say, you go to UCLA, you go to USC, you go to Stanford, you go to all these schools, and then you show up at Sonoma State. Your first impressions of Larry Allen, and did you think that in this day and age, it's hard to find sleeper guys. Did you kind of felt like you had a sleeper guy or at first, or did you know that everybody was going to get in on this player?
Well, I knew he was big and he could move, and he dominated that level of Division II. It wasn't even 1AA, what we call FCS today, I believe. But yeah. And I kind of tapped the brakes a little bit. I mentioned him to Larry Lacewell.
Yes.
And so that you have to kind of plant the seed. And but when I was convinced was the East-West game.
Right.
And the East-West game was just a notch below the Senior Bowl.
Out there in Palo Alto at the time, right?
I'll never forget this. They stayed at the Marriott. I'd stay at the same hotel as the players. And I would say 80% of them who played in the East-West game, they were heading to Mobile to play in the Senior Bowl.
Right.
So it was a good game. Both games were good and very, very competitive. But I never forget, when they say it East-West, it was truly East-West.
Right.
So I think they cut it off around the Mississippi River, maybe through Oklahoma and parts of Texas. But Larry Allen's with the West, obviously.
Yeah.
And he's blocking Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State guys, and saying, these are the same type of guys that are going to be going to the NFL.
Right.
And I think what kind of escalated it, if you will, prior to the game, Lacewell attended the game. I said, Coach, this guy's better than Todd Stussy, and I started rattling off all of these offensive linemen, and I can't repeat on the air here what he said.
Yeah.
But then Brian, you know Lacewell as well as I do.
Oh, no, absolutely, yeah.
You had to almost grab him. I said, we're going to these offensive line drills.
Yes.
And he's just seeing Larry Allen just not only just dominating these guys, but just engulfing them. And so we're walking to the car, and all he said was, boy, you might be right. And you can relate to that.
Sure,
that
absolutely,
comment.
yeah. So, but when you get to a point where like you're looking at this player and you're kind of like going, wow, this guy, and you mentioned the Todd Stussy, I mean, it was Cal, I think, Todd Stussy was at. And so, but you mentioned these, like working or looking at these players and how they're able to, it's like, gosh, he's comparing to, you had no doubt about this guy, did you?
After the
East-West game sold you, but you had, because you were thinking a level of competition, weren't you?
Initially, yes.
Yeah.
And then the level of competition where he dominated that group. But you understand the process of the Cowboys. I had to get Larry Lacewell on board, or I knew there would be no chance.
Right.
So then at that point, then Hudson Houck saw
The
him
offensive line coach.
and liked him.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if Ernie Zampese had seen a lot of him or Jerry, but we were getting close to our pick.
Right.
And I would say within 15, 20 minutes, and we put on a little bit of tape at the time.
Right.
And in Walter Juliff's office, and there was Jerry and Hud and Ernie Zampese, Lacewell, and myself, and we watched him, and Ernie said, "This guy's good."
Yeah.
And so that was it, and we were just kind of waiting to see if he fell, and he did.
Yeah. Working with Coach Johnson, again, in collegiately you'd done it, so you had an idea, maybe had a little bit more of an advantage over the other scouts at the time. Talk about, because we always, the thing with the Cowboys, you and I learned this about coaches getting involved with personnel. But in the case of Jimmy Johnson, that was a real plus, wasn't it?
Yes.
So talk about as far as or give us an idea of what it was like with Coach Johnson as an evaluator. How did you have to present as a scout to Coach Johnson and to the coaches there?
Jimmy, he was easy to scout for. Very similar to Parcells. Parcells liked big guys.
Right.
Jimmy liked speed. You could find, was it Claiborne that went to Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, and he might have ran a 4.85 or something like that.
Sure.
Good football player.
Right.
But if on specifically on defense, if you couldn't run, Jimmy didn't want him.
Right.
And he wanted very, very highly competitive guys. And I'm kind of a little bit from the school that, if a guy is competitive and he can run, they get tougher.
Right.
You can coach in the toughness, but normally you can't make a guy faster.
Right.
And so, you can say, Jimmy, this guy's a good football player. He really doesn't fit us because he doesn't have the guidelines that you're looking for speed-wise. And so we would move on from that player.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break here. We'll be right back. We're going to have some more with Tom Ciskowski. Stay tuned. This episode is brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 sports picks app, and it's really, really simple to use, guys. You just pick more or less on a few player stats, and that is your lineup. You're looking at things like points, yards, goals, strikeouts. You decide. Is a player going more or less than that number? And it's available in most states, including our great state of Texas. So you can jump in and play. If you're new, download the Prize Picks app, use the code HMA, and when you get to play your first $5, you get $50 in lineups instantly. And you can follow me there too, at Crown Media, so you can see my picks before the show and ride along with what I am playing. All right. Let's get to it. Let's see what our lineup is going to be today. We're going World Cup action. Kylian Mbappe of France. Let's go more than half that goal. All he needs to do is get a goal. That's against Norway. That should be an excellent match. And let's go with Lionel Messi. Let's go with him also scoring a goal against Jordan. That should be an interesting one as well. Again, that's Prize Picks. Use the code HMA. Play $5. Get 50 in lineups. Good luck with your selections. This episode is also brought to you by World Springs. If you're looking for a way to unplug, recover, and reset for a few hours, World Springs in the Colony is the place for you. They've got over 40 mineral hot springs and cold plunges, plus saunas, private cabanas, food, drinks, and plenty of space just to slow down for a bit. Whether you're looking for a date night, a recovery day after a tough workout, or just an excuse to unplug, World Springs has you covered. Use promo code CGM when you book your soak reservation and you'll get 30% off your visit. And here's the best part. If you subscribe to Crown Global Media on YouTube and use our code CGM, you'll automatically be entered into our World Springs VIP summer giveaway leading into the Cowboys training camp. One winner will receive 6 full-day soak passes, a private cabana rental, a $100 gift card, and a World Springs gift bag loaded with some of their favorite spa products. Head over to worldsprings.com, use the code CGM, save 30%, and we'll see you out there. You mentioned working with Coach Johnson and how easy it was to scout with him or how to scout for him. Were you guys in those Super Bowl teams and stuff? You guys had such a nice run. We were chasing you guys in Green Bay. I mean, we really were chasing you. We were chasing San Francisco. How did the process come through with just the accumulation of all that talent that you guys were able to get? What was it? Was it him saying, "Hey, I need"? You're talking about the speed, but gosh, you guys got your roster was just outstanding. How did you guys put together your roster that way?
Initially, what I think helped is everyone knew this was the early phase of going into free agency.
Yeah.
Plan B really helped
Right.
the Cowboys with Novacek and that group. But I think that if I can pinpoint one thing, Jimmy was excellent at selling to the coaches and to the scouts exactly what he wanted.
Right.
And both groups were on the same page.
Right.
Like I'm sure Campbell might have mentioned this. Darren Woodson was more of that outside linebacker, rover back. We'd call him a hybrid today, I guess.
Right, exactly.
But when you saw his speed, his competitiveness, his toughness, he can play safety.
Yeah.
You probably could have bulked him up to play him at linebacker will linebacker if you needed to.
Right.
He was that physical. So you just tried to surround yourself and think of all the great players and start with Aikman and Emmett and Michael. Then Charles Haley later in a trade, Russell Maryland. They all loved football. They all were tough. They were all competitive. So Jimmy would not take a step back towards a guy, and we've known of people who's fallen asleep in meetings who he cut, and he just wouldn't tolerate it. And there was a standard that was set with coaches, scouts. This is our quote unquote our type of guy.
Yeah.
And we tried to surround ourselves with as many of those players that we could find.
You took over the role, longtime scout, long service to the team. You then took over the role. Jeff Ireland moved on, and then you got the opportunity to sit in the same chair of our former boss, Larry Lacewell.
Yes.
And that is not an easy chair to sit in. No. And I'm saying that just from a guy that was from the observation part of it, not an easy chair to sit in because you're kind of getting pulled in a lot of different directions. Here you are, you want to be on the road scouting players and stuff, but you're back at the office kind of managing, putting out fires too. What about that job did you love? And what about that job were you like, man, I'm pulling my hair out today?
Well, the most difficult challenge, if you will, there were three groups that were involved with it. First and foremost, the Joneses.
Yeah.
Then you had the coaches, then you had the scouts, and you always felt like it was a little bit of a balancing act. Do
you feel that way today still? Do you feel like, even kind of looking back, what Will McClay has to deal with a little bit more? That job, do you feel like the job, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, I'm famous for interrupting people, but do you feel like the job has changed much since you had that?
Well, I'm not there, so I can't specifically say, but I do believe that the coaches are involved heavily.
Sure.
And so if I had to guess, I would say probably yes.
Yeah.
But when I took over, I visited with Larry Lacewell.
Right.
And he goes, at the end, do your work and you do what's best for Jerry Jones, because if you do what's best for Jerry Jones, you're doing what's best for the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
And that was I wasn't at all intimidated by not agreeing with the coach or agreeing with the scout if I thought it was what was best for the team.
Yeah.
And it'd ruffle a few feathers from time to time, but if you'll appreciate this, that is, if they go in there and the scouts start talking about a player and they're all reporting the same thing,
right,
they're not scouting, they're talking to each other.
Right.
If you don't have a little bit of difference in grade, now, if you have one group has a second round on a player, another scout has a third round, and two or three scouts have fifth rounds, that's a player that needs to be researched further.
Right.
But if they're all sitting there basically rattling off the same grade and saying the same thing, buyer beware.
Okay. You mentioned there's three groups. It's the coaches, the scouts, the Joneses. I kind of gave it the nickname the Bermuda Triangle. because you're in the middle. You're in the middle of the storm.
Yes,
is what you are. How was it to manage those three groups when you're sitting in that chair?
Well, first and foremost, everything is about building a relationship, and I would try to get to know the head coach, some of the assistants, and I thought what we did a good job of was, and I assume they're doing the same thing today, is if there's been a coaching change.
Right.
All right, each coach comes in and explains exactly what he's looking for in his position.
Right.
So this way, the scout has somewhat of a vision of players that they evaluate who fits and maybe who doesn't fit, and so, but that's a good way to put it, is the Bermuda Triangle, because they're each group, and what I try to convince the coaches of, if I'm recommending a player, I don't want you to lose the game. I want to win the game as much as you do. I think this guy helps us win the game. Right. And if they saw it differently, then sometimes they would get a little frustrated with me. And I'm saying, I'm on your side. We're all in this together.
Right.
But let's, if we have to, grab two different coaches on that side of the ball of the player that you're looking at, and a couple scouts besides the area guy who maybe is in agreement with me, and then we sort it out to get it right.
Yeah. How quickly can you tell sitting in a meeting that it's going to be a really good player?
Quickly.
Yeah. Like sometimes when you're sitting in the big chair and a scout presents and you're thinking like, man, this sounds like, did you know which scouts, and this is going to sound terrible, do you know which scouts could really scout and which ones might lack a little bit of like, did you know, and did you put like, okay, I trust what he's saying here, or maybe I need to go and look a little further over here with certain scouts?
Well, I'll put it this way. I think every scout has their strengths and their weaknesses.
Yeah, and you know that going in, right?
Know that going in. I would have a scout when we drafted Tyron.
Yeah.
Had Tyron, Colorado. I'm going blank now on the name. The Patriots took him.
Nate Solder, yeah.
And then Costanzo at Boston College.
Boston College, yeah.
I think the majority of the room, everyone liked Tyron.
Yeah.
But I didn't want I didn't want people to feel like in the event that Tyron was gone, that there's not other good players that we might consider. And
you didn't want the room to get depressed if Tyron Smith went off the board.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we did a thorough background check on the three players.
Yeah.
And so some scouts are really excellent at digging that information.
Yeah.
I'm not as concerned about, quote unquote, believe it or not, the grade, because there were so many people cross-checking, people going over the top. And now I didn't want him to be off by 5 rounds or something like that.
Right.
But if they were a round or so off, it didn't concern me as much.
Right.
Because I knew what their strength was getting the information. But even besides that, and you said, did I know whether a guy was going to be a good player? When they get into the character, and there's two things to the character. There's the personal character, and then there's the football character.
Right.
And if they were very, very strong in both areas, I felt pretty good about it.
Did you, you said both areas, is there one area that kind of sways you one way or another? Is there one that you're like, when you talk to a player and or the scout's telling you, because I remember sitting in meetings with you guys, and I remember you guys going through the character stuff, and I would say, they got this guy nailed. And I'm like, why are we talking about this guy? And then we'd end up talking about the guy to the point of maybe even drafting him. I remember with, and I'm not trying to pile on Dwayne Goodrich here. Remember Henry Schroka making a really, really good report, as far as good report of all the information about the player. And then we end up drafting the player in the second round, and I'm going, and then when at the end of it, and again, this is not trying to, hurt the kid, but that was one of those times where I go, and I look back and I go, damn, scouts had him right, and then you go, Did you ever worry about that? Did you ever worry about the outside influences that you have to deal with in that building?
Yes, that happens. But you're never going to have a perfect player for the most part.
Yeah.
But even if a guy has some questionable personal characters, but football is so important to him, then that's a tough decision. The Cowboys, it's such a high-profile team. He loves to play football, but is the other stuff going to get him in the end?
Right.
Now, what'll get you is if the guy's personal character is a little bit shady,
right,
and he's been an up and down player,
right,
on the field, but when you someone will present a tape that they've just shown his good plays, rather than I would as a general rule, is if a guy has some character that we're going off the field that we're going to have to kind of work with, he better be a dynamic football player on the field, or it's not worth the investment.
First time I ever heard "Walk on Water," you and Ron Wolf were telling me about, like, hey, this guy had better walk on water if we're going to take this guy, if we're going to, because whether it was the character or he was a little short or something like that. I do remember a meeting, Thomas. I remember a meeting. This goes back, and here I'm going after another player, Jacob Rogers. I remember you telling Bill Parcells, Bill, he's everything you hate in an offensive lineman. And we drafted the guy anyway. Talk about, and I'm not asking to slam Parcells or anything like that, but how difficult is that when you fight, you do the work, and you say your piece, but then you don't feel like you get listened to. Somebody makes a decision that goes a completely different direction than you.
Well, I've been on both sides of that, where I've wanted a guy and others didn't like, and so it goes right along with, this is how I feel about him, and but you're the boss and you make the decision, and that the draft wasn't the Jacob Rogers draft, but with Burnett and Ratliff and Ware, Canty.
Oh, that was the 05 draft.
That was a great draft, and Bill was right there in the middle of that, stamping that. So, I think what I always enjoyed about Parcells was he would set you up.
Oh no, he would.
He would
absolutely. He would test your commitment to the player.
He would. Do you have a conviction for this player?
Right.
Then if you started crawfishing, he'd eat you alive.
Right.
But if you held your ground and said, no, this is what I feel about the guy, and you stick with it, I think he respected you for that.
Yeah, I think Bill respected the fight.
Yeah.
Good way to put it. And I think he respected the fight, and I think he always wanted to test how much you were willing to fight on players. I think he really wanted to see, okay, but when you said that to him, like, Bill, this guy is everything you hate in an offensive lineman. And I'm sorry, Jacob Rogers, if you're listening to our podcast, but the evaluation is, and Bill, there's decisions that were made and stuff like that. Most difficult time you've ever had in a draft room during a draft? One where you're like, you know what, I've just got to grit my teeth and we got to go forward here.
Well, maybe a couple of them of occasions and
I'll celebrate your wins too. I'll give you a chance to celebrate your wins here too.
I feel like that the negotiation of the board of it should be it should be valued and honored.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you build the thing, if you spend all that time and money and effort to build the thing, honor the thing, right?
Right. And so there were two different occasions, and I've visited with you, with you in the past. We're in the second round, and there's one guy left in the first round, and it's LaShawn McCoy.
Right.
We don't take him.
Right.
I fought to take him, and then on another occasion, we were in the third round, and there was a first-round player on the board.
Yeah.
NaVorro Bowman. We didn't take him.
Right.
And if you look at combine their Pro Bowls and All Pros,
sure,
And I had a source, which I would never mention, out in San Francisco, that let's say the first 5 years of Bowman's career, Willis got all the recognition.
Right.
But in the building, some thought Bowman was actually better.
Right.
Then he got the knee, and I think he was bone on bone, tried to play a couple more years.
Right.
But if he could have matched another 5 years on top of his initial 5,
right,
he might be in the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
So I think you go to all that work. Don't be concerned about, well, we were pretty loaded up at linebacker. No, because you can't control injuries.
Yeah.
You can't. And I really felt like, man, I'll never forget Romo. Tony, you almost got, after Washington game, we'd talk once in a while, So what happened? Because I just felt like I had to stick it in there. I felt like I always had to make a play.
Right.
And I just felt like that a guy like LaShawn McCoy, Tony, it's not there. Check it down.
Yeah.
Speed sweeps, draws, reverses.
Yeah.
What that would have taken a lot of heat off of Romo,
right,
thinking that he had to make a play down the field when you could hand it off to this guy or the gadget plays to get him in space. What
did you enjoy? What was the thing that you enjoyed the most about working for the Jones family?
I've told this story many, many times, and I think that unfortunately, it seems if the player doesn't turn out like they like,
sure,
everyone blames it on Jerry Jones,
right,
or the coaches, or whatever. But if the player's good, then they'll tip their hat to a scout or two, and,
sure,
and I think that's unfair. But even when there's been a player I've liked and it didn't work out, or Jerry has never, ever come back and say, well, why did we draft this guy?
Right.
And so I look at it from the standpoint, if you're going to bash him for the players that don't work out, give him credit for the players that do.
Yeah.
So I felt like I never had that pressure where, boy, I've got to do this or Jerry. No, Jerry took it. And so I've always respected that about him, the good and the bad. But I don't think for the good players necessarily he gets enough credit for that.
Right.
But he takes a bashing when things don't work out.
I always found about Jerry Jones, I found out he was a really good listener. And maybe to a fault.
Yes.
Am I on the right page on this one?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I always felt like that if you could tell Jerry Jones something. Now, the problem is you had to be maybe the last guy to it. Maybe you had to be the last guy into the thing. But I always felt like that he listened. Now maybe if he would act on it, that was another thing. But I always felt like he gave you the opportunity to say your piece.
Yes, and what else he would say is, you have that flexibility to change your mind if you want.
Sure.
Because we would have the early meetings sometimes in December or January.
Right.
We're trying to build it. And he said, after further, if you've done more research, if you want to change and you have a different feeling on the guy, that's great.
What bothered you the most sitting in that chair about the media? Was there anything that bothered you and you have a good relationship with a lot of guys and gals. I've seen you interact. You have a good relationship. But in that chair, it's a little bit different. What were there things that bothered you that the media would report? Then you're like, man, that's not right. That's not right. Were there things?
I can't recall of anything. I thought that the media was.
Do you think they were fair? Do you think they were fair
when I was there?
Yeah.
From that standpoint, and. Like you said, I built a relationship with him. I wouldn't tell him who we're going to draft or this or that. But,
right.
But I just, they were, pretty straightforward on everything.
Do you think that, did you ever sit there? There were times where I would sit there and somebody would say something in the media, and I would think to myself, they're right. They're right. Maybe there was something that we did or didn't do, and I would think to myself, they're right. And then there were other times where I wanted to lash out, and not lash out. I would say, I wish I could sit down with and tell them why we did it that way.
Right.
Were you ever in that state where you wanted to walk over, and I'm just using an example, walk over to Todd Archer or Clarence Hill, and just say, hey, let me walk you through this way.
To be honest, I was more concerned with the everyday business within the organization, and a lot of times.
So the media didn't bother you at all?
Probably there were some things said that I wasn't aware of because I didn't follow it that much.
Sure.
And they have their job to do and to draw interest, and but I think that they would, from time to time, I wouldn't say poke the bull, but they would try to say, get me to question something Jerry had done, and I wouldn't,
Right.
I said, and the thing is, Larry Lacewell said it best. When it comes to business, Jerry Jones might be the luckiest guy, but we would talk through things and make a decision, and then Jerry would have to make a decision, and it just sometimes didn't work out.
Right.
But it wasn't like he walked in the room and said, I read in the book that this player is going to be a good player and can help your team. We're going to draft him. It wasn't like that at all. To your point earlier, Jerry was a great listener.
Right.
But just sometimes the luck wasn't there.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out.
One of the most impressive videos, and this is when we used to tape the draft meetings in Dallas. And I think this is before you. No, I think you were there. You were there for the Randy Moss discussion.
Yes.
And because I was like, 92. So you were part of this one. One of the most passionate speeches I've ever heard from scouts were on the Randy Moss, literally in a discussion with Chan Gailey, a discussion with Dwayne Painter, Jim Garrett saying, this isn't the Boy Scouts. Talk about the passion of scouts in a draft room at that time. Talk about how do you know when I have got to go and I've got to fight now. I can't sit back because I think it was Walt Jaworski, or it might have been. I think it was Walt. I don't know if it was Walt and Jim. It was two. There were two that stood up and said,
"It was Walt and Jim." Yeah.
Yeah. That and you were sitting in the room. Talk about that discussion on that particular player.
Well, I think there was the league was a lot different back then as far as when it comes to behavior off the field, substance and everything else.
Oh, no, we had problems in Philadelphia with them. I'm not going to lie about that.
And then I think Michael Irvin and Eric Williams had that shenanigan, that situation.
Right.
And I think people were concerned that if we match up Moss with Michael, how's that going to would he have been the Randy Moss that we know today, or would so I think that's what scared the people off. I don't think anyone questioned his ability, but would he be a fit with everything that was going on in the NFL at that time and within the Cowboys? So and Michael but we all love Michael Irvin. I mean,
right.
He just on game day you want him on your team, but how would he have been? Because I'm sure they'd have been out on the town and this.
Sure.
And so it would have been very interesting. Now maybe Michael would have gotten him up at 6 o'clock in the morning and says, hey, come on, I know we've only slept for 4 hours.
Right.
3 hours, but we're going to work out.
Right.
I don't know. But so I understand both sides of it, but the passion of it too, and it's easy to look back. But when you look at Greg Ellis, who we drafted instead of Moss, he got about 90, close to 90 sacks.
Matter of fact, I had this discussion yesterday because I got in trouble saying that when Joey Bosa, a lot of people were like, I said I compare Joey Bosa to Greg Ellis, and Ellis I think had 82 sacks, Bosa had 78, and it's talk about Bosa not, but Greg Ellis, we were in Philly, we loved Greg Ellis too, we loved Greg Ellis too. But the passion of those two scouts, how often do you see that in a room like that? That's not an everyday occurrence.
Well, I don't think it is anymore. But that's what I miss about it. Call it old school, call it whatever you want. But I think that too many times scouts hold back today because they don't want to make their superior uncomfortable in the room or this and that. But I think Jerry wouldn't care personally.
Yeah.
He always said, I want to know. I just don't want you expressing an opinion that you don't have any background on. But he would want to know why you feel the way you do.
Right.
And Jaworski going to the Aikman deal, for a while it was, and I'm not God rest his soul, picking on Lou Holtz, but Lou Holtz is just going on and on and on about Tony Mandridge.
Right.
And So this is a relatively, well, it was the first year, a young coaching staff in the NFL.
Right.
And we know how important the quarterback is.
Right.
And Jaworski said, you're a bunch of dumb SOBs if you take an offensive lineman over a franchise quarterback.
Right.
And I think that I think people had heard about Jaworski,
right.
how good he was.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that maybe changed the tide a little bit, starting to roll in the right direction for Aikman rather than Mandridge.
Yeah. See, to me, like I love when the scouts get up, and I love it. I mean, I love it when you did your Philip Buchanan, when you drew, like, there was questions about his height, and you drew the lines on the board.
Yeah.
And you go, that much, guys. It's that much. Yeah. You know, and I was like going, gosh dang, he made a good point there.
But plus he was a returner. That's
yeah, exactly.
But if he hadn't been a returner, I'd maybe said
sure.
But I just think I think that we
miss those old guys, don't we?
I do.
No. I think the NFL misses those old guys.
No question. And here's the thing: I've seen knockdown dragouts. People throw their scout book at, and then when it was over, we'd go out and have a beer and go to dinner.
Yeah.
Today. But you know, it's everywhere in society. It's a little softer, if you will.
A little softer, a little softer.
And so, you know, but you have to say, all right, that guy went to the school, and 3 other players, scouts went to the school.
Yeah.
This is what he saw, and this is in his research, and say this is why I feel that way.
Right.
And don't say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. No, respect. That's what he saw.
Respect.
That's what he saw.
Respect. Right. I always felt like if you did the tape work, you know, and you had an opinion, I was totally on board. If I saw that, like, you did the work, you know, and you did the school call, and you had I loved listening to you break down players. I really did. I was on the pro personnel side of it in there, and I loved listening to you discuss players and like call into question, like, why are we doing this, guys? Why are we doing this? Did you ever feel like that got you in trouble?
It did from time to time, but I think that you have to.
But it had to be done, Thomas.
You have to stir the pot a little bit.
You have to do these things.
Or, you know, what I always wanted to avoid was we're breaking training camp and everyone looks around and says, Miller here, who we drafted.
Yeah.
And, well, I mean, I liked him okay, but yeah, right, now wait a minute. You know, you don't want the conversation like, oh, guys, this guy really looks out of place.
Right.
And I would say things, and it was the last year that I was at Dallas. And I said, guys, we're trying to push this guy up because we have a need at a position.
Right.
He'll show flashes. I'm going to give you that. But the junior high coach couldn't get it out of him.
Right.
High school coach.
Right.
And the college coach. But because he's got traits, we're going to get it out of him. That's like saying a quarterback throws a perfect spiral, and so he's going to be an NFL quarterback because he's big and he throws a perfect spiral. But we know that, as you well know, there's a lot more to it than that.
Right. Do you have an idea of why Dallas has had success with some early picks, but some late picks have kind of fallen by the wayside? You know, and I look at, to me, there's been a couple of guys that, you know, with the Mozzie Smith one, with the Tristan Hill, that one, maybe the guys didn't really like football. How does that play into, like, that's a hard thing to, maybe it's not a hard thing to do, but how can you tell that? How can you tell if a guy doesn't like football? Or, I mean, you're talking to your sources and, hey, listen, I wouldn't touch this guy. Or they're saying, God, this guy's a glass eater. Guy, you got to, you know, that. How does that, because it seems like they've had some picks that haven't worked out.
Joseph.
Yeah. Because they don't really like football. That's the, how do you balance that in the room?
Well, I think this is my perception. I don't know how Lace, Ireland, or McClay looks at it. I would give extra credence, value to the area scout.
Yeah.
That's why when I'm a cross-checker, and let's say when I was doing the West Coast.
But you did offensive line, too. That was your area of expertise.
I did offensive line, but I knew Larry Allen and Todd Stussy, and the other kid that the Colts took was Eric Mollum. Remember him?
Eric Mollum, yep, sure do.
Okay, so I knew those guys. Now I'm grading a Penn State or a Notre Dame player as a cross-check. I don't know them. I can only grade their ability, but I can't grade the entire package.
Right.
So you're a little bit comparing an apple to an orange. That's why I'm always nervous about making evaluations by just sitting in the office in Dallas as a cross-checker or whatever you're,
Sure.
is if you are not going to the school.
Yeah.
But I think that I've always stressed that I want you to be good evaluators, but your sources are just as important.
Right.
So I had a guy up at the University of Oklahoma, and I'm going to say this. He was never wrong.
Yeah.
He wasn't even a coach.
Yeah.
But he was around him every day, and, like the trainers. The kid
Equipment
comes in and
guys,
goes, why in the world we got to wear pads today? There's complaining and this and that. Or a guy that just comes in, gets his ankles taped, gets maintenance treatment for a bump, even though it's not major.
Right.
And has already got his lift in for the day that morning. So you know those sources who you trust, and they'll say, let me tell you something, Miller, he's tougher than McKenzie. And McKenzie would tear your throat out. You got to be kidding me. Yeah. No, I'm telling you, this guy is. So then you sit there and say, all right, just because they said it doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
You got to watch a video for clarification, for validation that this guy, man, he is a tough son of a gun. And now you feel good that you're going to get, that's one aspect of it, you're going to get a tough player. So, tell me about another player. He's got all the ability in the world, but he's missed 50% of his workouts in the summer.
Right.
He falls asleep in the head coach's meetings. Right. All right. Analytics is a tool, but analytics doesn't tell you that stuff.
Right.
So I still think you need boots on the ground, if you will.
Right. Guys
going into the school that has credibility, that has great resources at that school, that can talk to 3 or 4 or 5 people, and they're going to voice the same opinion about the guy, good or bad.
How hard was it to walk the line when you were going on the West Coast and you were going from UCLA to USC to Stanford to Washington, all those places, and you were learning stuff about those schools, and you had friends at the next school? Was it ever tough to not say, well, I was at USC, man, and this is – did everybody ever ask you?
No. Never.
And you just, knowing you wouldn't say a damn word anyway.
I think one time they said, we're playing
exactly. We're playing
Cal.
We're playing Cal this week. I heard you were just up at Cal. Were you up at Cal? What do you think of Cal?
But they didn't specifically. Maybe they were getting ready to, but I beat them to the punch. I said, well, you better get ready for the triple option because they put the wishbone in this week. So he realized that I'm not going to answer that.
Sure. That was fun. There's a lot of people ask me, how do you become a scout? There's nothing you studied in college. There's nothing I studied in college that prepared us to be scouts. A lot of people ask, how do you become a scout? And they want to know. And I don't have a great answer because I feel like I was at the right place at the right time with the right people that kind of believed in me. Because these scouting jobs, you think they open up, they don't open up. They're like, they open and then they're closed really quickly because people hire within. But if some guy or gal out there wanted to become a scout, give me some advice.
I agree with what you had said. I think you have to have a sponsor. There's got to be someone.
Got to have a sponsor.
Or someone that maybe that you're young, out of college, maybe do an internship, something like that, and then after a year or two, they say, all right, we'll put you back here and grade these 10 guys.
Right.
Because now you've maybe sat in the meetings and see how they grade, and you're studying, and a lot of times you can watch people. Are they just trying to do their work and then go home? Yeah. Or are they reading the scouting manual to understand a specific position, or what are you looking for with position specifics or positive traits for a player, that they're really trying to study the ins and outs of it? But what I found today, it's usually an entry level that you work your way up, or it's a former coach who has a contact at a place. And sometimes those guys have a difficult time because they have to realize you're not coaching anymore.
Right.
Don't sit there and say, well, they should play covered.
Yeah.
You know, all you're doing is looking at this, at what is your scheme, what do the coaches want, and then grading his skill set to see if he's a fit for that.
Right.
So, but I think, and I've had people call me and I said, you need to email all 32 teams.
Right.
And tell them I'm willing to, you can even say volunteer. As I understand it now, due to labor laws, you have to pay him something.
You have to pay him something, right.
But I'll be willing to start. And I've even encouraged, send me tape to my house, college tape, and I'll grade stuff at home.
Yeah.
And then on my own dime, I'll fly and meet you at the combine, or I'll fly and meet you, at your home at the headquarters.
It's hard nowadays, though, right? It's hard. It's not easy. I think you have a better chance of going and being an airline pilot, learn how to fly a plane, than you do a scout. I mean, you really do. It's difficult to get in. You're right. I went through the recruiting route, and then went through NFL Europe, and then just got bounced along to, and then got to work with the Packers. But gosh, I wouldn't even know where to tell somebody to start, and there's scouting schools and stuff like that, and I'd like to see the number of folks that have been able to go from that to get jobs and stuff like that. But it's not easy to get in.
It's not.
It's just not. It's a very, very difficult thing. But once you get in, hopefully you hit on a few players along the way and stuff like that. Okay, one last thing. And kind of avoided talking about the current Cowboys. I didn't mean to avoid it, but I always like to pick your brain on other things. Talk about the challenges now that Will McClay faces with a brand new staff on defense. Talk about and you made it, you talked about it earlier. You said, well, there's things you have to. But now they go out, they scout, they have a draft, they have free agency. Where is Will McClay in a spot right now where he's in a good spot because he kind of has an idea? Or is this going to keep evolving for him when it comes to finding players for Christian Parker?
Well, I think it's a combination of both.
With the new staff.
Right. I think the challenging part was when Christian Parker was hired until the draft.
Right.
That the scouts had to learn exactly what he wanted so that they could plug guys in.
Right.
Now that they'll be going to training camp and observing him coaching and players that they did select for his scheme, hopefully it works out, and then they say, I've got a little bit of a blueprint here for what we need at players on defense. So, it was a little – I remember it's been tough. It's been tough where, Dan Quinn was here, let's press man stuff. Then Eberflus comes and we want to play zone.
Right.
And now I'm not totally sure if the new guy's a combination of both. I know I've seen some – when I think about Philadelphia, do they just all out blitz all the time? I haven't seen a lot of that.
Yeah,
now.
more zone stuff.
And then fire a guy to bring an extra.
Right.
But they'll
Big Fangio.
He's still going to have that. Those deep safeties make it hard for you to go.
Exactly.
You're going to have to go down the down the field to score. But but do I truly know that scheme what they want to do? No. But I think that the scouts have been around to the year or through the draft, through OTA's mini camp. Now they should
better equipped, right? Yes. Better equipped to go on the road in August and kind of find a way to build this roster with the type of players they want.
Especially when they view training camp, and they're able to see
the guys coach,
and the players who's fitting and who's not.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, I think. The hardest part would be as an area scout, and then all of a sudden you have a coaching change, and all year long you've looked at a specific kind of player, and now you have to turn around, and then they let go of that staff, and now you're going, uh-oh, did I miss on some guys here? That then you have to go back. Is there a way you have to scramble back on some of these guys?
Well, what we had done when we were a 4-3 team, Bill wanted to go to a 3-4.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
I said our grades are already in.
Our grades are in,
4-3, and so instead of – my recommendation was I want guys to, we called it continuous study.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you go into a school in August and fall camp, or maybe the first game of the year, you see a game, then you go in the middle of the season, but then they've played 5 later games. I would still rather have them look at the two or three of the later games rather than everyone scramble around changing their grades.
Right.
And so if there was a guy that maybe was a 280-pound 3 technique, hey, guys, this guy is a good player. He'd have been a good player for us in our 4-3.
Right.
He's really not a fit now. We would either 9 him or we'd say, you know what, we'll give him a 3rd-round grade and he'll be a good nickel rusher, something like that.
Sure. Yeah, you got to kind of adapt
So,
your coaches.
yes.
For sure. Thomas, thank you.
All right, enjoyed it.
Pleasure, man. It was a pleasure to get to catch up with you. I know we've had our day in the sun as far as scouting and stuff like that. But man, I loved hanging out with you. And folks, seriously, this guy in a draft room is awesome. I've seen him stand up and fight scouts, and I mean fight in a good way, not be disrespectful or all that. But you talk about a passionate guy. If you're a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, this guy won you 3 Super Bowls. Hopefully they get back to that again. But I love the way that you scout. I really, really do. And I'm proud to call you a friend.
Thank you, Bryan.
All right. Well, that will do it for us here on the Doing All Right. Hey, you always ask me, how do you get some merch, Tom? You want some merch. You always want merch. How about this? Little 4th of July action for you here. Jacob, see if you can get me taken care of here today. Right there. Little Crown Global Media, little logo, little 4th of July look and all that. We've got that up on our website. We always come up with kind of creative T-shirts and stuff like that we can do. So yeah, check that out. A little patriotic. It is up on the website. Oh, we got our quarter zips up. We've got our hoodies up, like you see right here. Hats, all those things. So be sure you check that out. That's crownglobalmedia.com. And our buddy Voch Lombardi will be back in the chair tomorrow. So we will see you then with another episode of the Doing All Right podcast. Take care, guys.